Hi all, welcome to Lexeria, your law learning space. So this is second video of our constitutional law series where we'll be discussing on the types of constitution. So what if I say that every country all around the world plays the same game but with different rules and different rule book? Yes, every country all around the world plays the same game. What is that game? Running of the government. And it has its own rules and its own rule book. What is rules here? It is constitutional principles. And what is the rule book here? It is the constitution. Yes, every country in this world run the government according to its own constitutional principles of its own constitution. Thus, we have different types of constitution all around the world. So, constitution is basically and majorly classified into 10 different types on the basis of its nature. So in this video, we'll be covering the classification of the constitution and on what basis the classification of the constitution is made, right? So on these 5 bases, this constitution is classified, right? The classification of constitution is on the basis of evolution, incorporation, method of amendment, nature of relationship between the government, and the classification which is according to the famous and popular scholar Elliot Bulmer. Okay, so on these bases we have 10 types of constitution all around the world. So let us discuss each and every of this type in detail. So first, on going with the basis of evolution, that is classification of constitution on basis of evolution, we have 2 types of constitution, that is evolved constitution and enacted constitution. We can remember it by E2, right? 2 E's. One stands for evolved constitution and the other stands for enacted constitution. So evolved constitution is like a tree where it grows. How a tree will grow? It will grow slowly and gradually. It will not all of a sudden. We cannot have a tree where we have to plant a seed, where we have to water the seed, and it grows gradually and slowly. Only after several years it will become a complete tree. So same is the evolved constitution, where it evolves slowly and gradually over time like a tree. Okay, so in evolved constitution, as said, it evolves over time through practices, judicial decisions, and traditions. Okay, so we cannot say a specific point of time. So we cannot say on this particular day this constitution has created, or this particular day only this constitution is enforced. We cannot determine the date of enactment or enforcement under this constitution, where it is indefinite. So it is immemorial. From the time immemorial, this constitutional principle grows slowly and steadily and gradually over time, and such type of constitution is called evolved constitution. It is like a tree that is evolved slowly and gradually over time. So on going with the second type, that is enacted constitution, it is a direct opposite of evolved constitution, where in this type of constitution people come together, they form an association or a committee together with the intention of creating a constitution for themselves. So whenever people in a country think that they want a constitution for their own, they come together and deliberately create a constitution or draft a constitution for their own. And also they'll announce that from this specific date, on this specific day, this constitution will be enforced or come into action. So this type of constitution is called enacted constitution. It is like a building where the owner of the building will decide on when this foundation should be laid down for a building and when the building should be completed, right? So it can be determined by time. So that is enacted constitution. So evolved constitution is like a tree that grows over time. Evolved constitution is a constitution that grows over time, and enacted constitution is a constitution which is like a building where it is created on a specific timeline or a specific period or on a specific date. Okay, so these are the 2 types of constitution on the basis of evolution. And on going with the types of constitution on the basis of incorporation is written constitution and unwritten constitution. So these are all the 2 types of constitution on the basis of incorporation. So you can remember it by remembering woo, right? So it is a sound that we make during excitement. So W stands for written constitution and U stands for unwritten constitution. So what is written constitution? Written constitution is actually a constitution where its provisions and its general principles of constitution are clearly written in a paper and codified or binded into a single document or a single book, and that is called written constitution. Written constitution means a constitution that is codified, that is written and binded into a single document or a single book, and that is called written constitution. One of the best example of written constitution is Constitution of India, where we have a single document called the Constitution of India, where we have codified and binded it into a single document, and that is called written constitution. Now, what is unwritten constitution? It doesn't mean, unwritten constitution doesn't mean that it is not written at all. So we'll think by hearing this name that unwritten constitution means it is not written at all, it is in the air or it is in the mind of people. No, not like that. Unwritten constitution means the constitution that is written and scattered in different documents, scattered in different sources. Okay, it does not mean that it is not written at all. It is written, but the principles, that is the constitutional principles, are scattered scattered by the sources, scattered among the sources of the constitution, among the sources such as customs, judicial decisions and traditions and all, where it is not binded into a single book. It is scattered in different sources, and that is called unwritten constitution. So one of the best examples of this unwritten constitution is the Constitution of UK, where they do not have a single binded document called constitution, where their constitutional principles are scattered by the judicial in the way of judicial decisions, traditions and customs that they followed from the time immemorial. Okay, so these are all the two types of constitution on the basis of incorporation, and there are two types of constitution on the basis of method of amendment. What is amendment? Amendment is actually modification that we make to a constitution. For example, think of a situation where you want to add new articles to the constitution, you want to add something new to the constitution, or you want to take something out of the constitution where you consider or you feel like that provision is unwanted. What do you make? You make modification to the constitution, right? So you modify the constitution by adding some of the provisions or removing some of the provisions or changing some of the provisions. Such method of modification is called, process of modification is called amendment of the constitution. And based on method of amendment, we have two types of constitutions. They are rigid constitution and flexible constitution. So you can remember this type by remembering the mnemonic such as radio frequency. Okay, so in radio, what we'll do, we'll change the frequency to a particular we'll change the frequency in order to get a desired channel. Only if we change the frequency to a particular point, we will get our desired channel, right? So thus modification in radio frequency, you can remember it as radio frequency. R stands for rigid and frequency F stands for flexible constitution. What is rigid constitution? Rigid constitution is where the process of modification of the constitution is very difficult, right? It does not mean that it cannot be modified at all. It can be modified, but the process that we have to follow, the procedures that are to be followed to amend or modify the constitution is very difficult, and that complex procedures makes this constitution makes this constitution difficult to change, and that type of constitution is rigid constitution, where it is very difficult to change or modify the constitution due to the complex procedure that it has for modification. And the second type is flexible constitution. What is flexible constitution? It is direct opposite of rigid constitution, where it can be modified simply. That is, it also does not mean that it does not have any procedures that should be followed for modification. In flexible constitution, there will be procedures for modification of the constitution or to modify the constitution, but that procedures will be in a simple manner. By following simple procedures, constitution can be modified, and such kind of constitution is called flexible constitution. And students, it is to be noted that Indian constitution is a blend of both rigid and flexible constitution. Okay, there are certain parts and certain provisions of the constitution which requires special provisions to modify, to amend in the Indian constitution, and also on the other hand, we have several parts and provisions in the Indian constitution which requires simple procedure for amendment. Okay, so Indian constitution is thus the blend of rigidity and flexible constitution. Okay, on going with the other types of constitution, so it is classified on the basis of distribution of power. On the basis of distribution of power, two types of constitutions we have. One is unitary constitution and the other one is federal constitution. You can remember it by remembering the mnemonic for U. Okay, for F in for stands for federal, and U in the mnemonic stands for unitary. Okay, so two types of constitution on the basis of distribution of power is unitary constitution and federal constitution. What is federal constitution? Federal constitution is actually a constitution where we have two governments in the country, right? One is union government and the other one is state government, right? So in federal constitution, the powers that are given to the unitary government and union government and the state government will be shared. That is, one government will not have more power than the other. Equally, both the government will have equal powers, and such kind of constitution which have provisions for sharing of those power, that is equal division of power, is called federal constitution. Okay, and on the other hand, what is unitary constitution? Uni means one, right? So in unitary constitution, it will have provisions where that provisions will give more power to the union government and will give limited power to the state government. Okay, so for example, we can take we can consider that union government will have the utmost ultimate power and the state government will have only very limited power, where the concentration of the power is more with the union government. So that is called unitary constitution. So in federal constitution, powers will be divided equally among the union government and the state government. On the other hand, unitary constitution is where it will contain the provisions where the concentration of power, it will be with the union government, where it will have more power, it will give more power to the union government, and it will have limited powers, it will give limited powers to the state government, right? So Indian constitution, when it comes to Indian constitution, it is federal in nature but unitary in spirit, meaning it is considered to be federal constitution but it has unitary features also. Thus Indian constitution is called as unitary in nature, unitary in form, federal in nature and unitary in spirit. So thus is the classification of constitution on the basis of distribution of power. And next is classification of constitution, which is according to Elliot Bulmer. So here it is actually a slight mistake where it is not Elliot Burner, it is Elliot Bulmer. So you can refer to the first slide of this PPT where it will be in a correct manner. So according to him, Elliot Burner, who is an eminent scholar, there are two types of constitution. One is procedural constitution and the other one is prescriptive constitution. You can remember it by two P's. One P stands for procedural constitution and the other P stands for prescriptive constitution, right? So what is procedural constitution? Procedural constitution is actually a constitution which focuses on the procedure. That is, there, for example, if a constitution lays down and focuses on the procedure of what should be done, that is how election should be conducted and procedure for conduction of election and how emergencies provision should be operated and how the people's rights should be given and what to do and how the procedure should be followed in case of violation of rights, and these are all the house that constitution focuses there. Okay, so in procedural constitution, it focuses on the procedure, that is it focuses on how things should be done, how things shall be done. So that is procedural constitution. On the other hand, it is prescriptive constitution. What is prescriptive constitution? Prescriptive constitution focuses on what should be followed and what should be done. So on the difference between procedural constitution and prescriptive constitution is that procedural constitution focuses on how things should be done and prescriptive constitution focuses on what should be done. Right, so these are all the differences between procedural constitution and prescriptive constitution. Again, Indian constitution is the blend of these two. It is the blend of procedural and prescriptive constitution. Right, so these are all the types of constitution, where finally we'll have a recap. We have 10 types of constitution. One is evolved constitution, which grows slowly and steadily, gradually over time. Second is enacted constitution, which is made on a specific time, on a specific period, that is it is made at once. And the third type is written constitution, where the constitution is written and codified or binded into a single document, is called written constitution. And unwritten constitution, what is unwritten constitution? Where it is not binded as a single document and its principles, constitutional principles, are scattered in many sources, and that is a unwritten constitution. What is flexible constitution? Flexible constitution is actually the constitution which is easy to amend or easy to modify or change. And the other type, that is rigid constitution, which is difficult to change. And on going with the next type of constitution is procedural constitution, which focuses on how things should be and how things should be followed or how things should work, and that is called procedural constitution. And prescriptive constitution, what does this say? It focuses on what should be followed, and that is prescriptive constitution. And the last two type of constitution is federal constitution and unitary constitution, where federal constitution focuses on the shared power and unitary constitution concentrates power in one particular government, that is the union government. So these are all the types of constitution, students. So if you want to access this PPT, I'll attach the link of this PPT in my description, where you can make use of this PPT for your preparation. So thank you.